session, and it will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. Okay, great. So welcome everyone. This is the second MUN workshop. Dan and I are happy to have you today. We will be talking a little bit about policies, position papers, and how to find solutions, how to prepare a resolution, and some other general tips about debating. So Dan, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. So to start with position papers, I'm sure you all know what that is, but usually when you apply to an MUN, you are requested to write a position paper for your country on the specific topic that you will be discussing in the committee. So this is not always the case, but I think in the Harvard MUN that some of you are going to, you have to write a position paper. So this is kind of the first impression that the chair gets of you. So I would really like for all of you to get this right and do it as best as you can. So I'm going to go over a few tips and tricks on how to improve your position papers, what to focus on, where to get your information, stuff like that. So let's start with the structure. Here I kind of took a screenshot of the heading of the position papers that basically I made in the past. This is the structure that I followed. So committee, delegation, topic, and then not the flag of the country that I'm representing, but the crest or whatever the country has. Usually the flag is a bit too basic and everyone knows it. These symbols are way more interesting. This is for Canada, for example, and probably many of you have never seen it before. So the next thing is really stick to the word/page limit. There's usually a page limit, 1 page or 2 pages, and make sure to follow that, because I've been a chair and I know that no one wants to read a 10-page position paper, but if someone is showing little effort in writing like half a page, that doesn't do anyone any good either. So please stick to the word/page limit, but also fill it out. Don't leave any space open because there's no reason to. You always have too much to write, so usually it's about reducing the volume, not increasing it, and fill up the space that you have. Don't put just one huge block of text. You know, that's basics of making something easy to read. And then check your grammar, check your spellings, everything. This is supposed to be a professional paper. If you think about MUN, it's supposed to be a simulation of diplomatic encounters between countries, and it's supposed to be at the highest level, so don't make sloppy mistakes. And then, of course, the content, which is more important than the form, of course. So my strategy was always take a strong stance. Don't use platitudes. Don't focus on so-called bullshit arguments. You know, don't say, oh, I wanna work with other countries. I wanna do everything as they want to. You know, take a strong stance. You're representing your country. You want your country to succeed. You want to not exactly beat other countries in a literal sense, but you want your country to come out on top. So focus on that. It should be nicer than your speeches, since in the speeches you should be really aggressive. That's how I play. Of course, not everyone plays like that, but it was pretty successful for me. So as I said, don't waste space for platitudes like we want to increase global cooperation on this issue, because everyone wants that, but no one actually ever does that. So it's a waste of time. So the 3 things that you should focus on: where you stand, why you stand there, and why others should do the same. So it's basic argument formation. I think most of you that have ever done debate or something like that know how to structure an argument, and a position paper is basically that. So yeah, diplomatic language, of course, no inappropriate words. Perhaps when you're quoting someone, choose an appropriate quote, of course, but don't overdo it. Choose something that's maybe a bit juicy, but you have to still maintain a level of professionalism. Never break character. So what does this mean? You are your country, right? If you are, let's say, Iran, you're not gonna say, we want the best for the state of Israel, right? That's not really something that Iran would ever say. So don't say that. And people do that all the time. Maybe not this specific example, but maybe in a more subtle way. But focus on what your country stands for. Focus on what the regime of your country stands for. So I'm going to go into all of that later, but don't break character, not in the position paper, not in the speech. That's MUN basics, but still people don't do that. And if the MUN is on a high level, if the chairs know what they're doing, they're gonna pick up on that and they're gonna reduce your points. So yeah, as I said, it's the first impression. So in my opinion, the position paper is as important as the opening speech. So of course, only the chairs get to see it, but they're the ones grading you. So it's super important. Assert yourself as someone who knows the subject. Read, and read. Like I'm going to go over the sources later, but here you have to show your knowledge. Here you have to also show that you know what you're doing, that you've been to MUNs before, even if you haven't. So if you can't really do it yourself, find a way to fake it a bit, because if you don't have the perfect position paper, you're not going to get best delegate. That's how it is. So if you're aiming for the top, this is the fundamentals. Then opening speech. So how I always did my opening speeches, I always restructured my position paper into an opening speech. That saves you a lot of time and also makes you write the position paper in a way where you're writing it with arguments in mind and with convincing the other party in mind. So that's the style that I always wanted to have in my position papers, and it worked out really well. So if you write the position paper as if you were writing a speech, that makes a pretty good position paper. So let's see. Yeah, the opening speech is super important. It basically establishes your ranking in the hierarchy of a debate. If you suck at your opening speech, no delegate is going to take you seriously. So that's why it's really important to assert your dominance, so to say, over the other delegates, not in a mean way, but with good arguments, with a strong performance. So rhetorical skills are key here, so you can do well later in the negotiations. Because if people perceive you as weak, they're just gonna assume that you'll bend over, you'll move out of the way when it comes to voting and vetoes and stuff like that. So be careful of that and really focus on practicing your opening speech. Stick to the time limit. There's always a time limit. Practice. If your text is too long, cut it down. And I usually read my opening speeches. I didn't do them from the improvised. I think it's fine to read them. If you can learn them by heart, go ahead. But I don't think that's a problem. So make sure you show who you want for your allies and rivals. I always, in my opening speech, already called out my rivals and called out my allies. So when I was giving arguments, I said, yeah, we agree with this and this country on this, but this and this country is completely wrong on this issue. So this way, people feel compelled to either go on your team or on the opposing team. And this way, you can set the stage before everything starts happening and basically manipulate the flow of the debate into your for your advantage. Okay, so this is, I think it's, yeah, it's covering it up a bit, but whatever. So you always get a study guide, and this is written by the chairs, so they kind of want you to read it. They always invest a lot of time into writing this, and it's usually pretty good research. But as I wrote here, it's not enough. This is something that's taken as a given that you read. It's not like, I don't even consider it research. It's like the fundamental knowledge, because these study guides never really go in depth. It's something that if you're interested in international affairs, you should already kind of know. Okay, they never really, they can't focus on every country, right? They give a general overview of the topic, which is usually some conflict or some, I don't know, some issue in the world, in international politics. So it's not enough for your country. That's why you need additional sources. And this is where finding appropriate sources comes into play. Because if you're Russia, you cannot read and list sources from America. You can't. A lot of people do that, but it's wrong. You have to either find government sources, which are the best, like statements, or the problematic thing here is if you're representing a democracy and a politician makes a statement that maybe is not the opinion of the government, the current government. So you have to be careful. If it's from the sort of leading coalition of parties, then maybe, but in an authoritarian country, that's way easier. Basically, if a government spokesman makes a statement, it's the position of the government. So make sure to pay attention to that, and then find national news, so either actual news controlled by the government, like Russia Today, or news from that country that are sort of aligned with the government. Don't look at opposition news. That's not what you're interested in. You're representing the coalition, not the opposition. You're representing the leading party. So if you choose the wrong sources and list the wrong sources in the position paper, that immediately, in my eyes, lowers the quality of your work and also lowers the quality of your preparation, because if the chair sees that you read the wrong sources, then you have the wrong information, and they will assume that you cannot really give a good position for your country. So that's pretty bad, right? And then UN resolutions. UN resolutions, in my opinion, are pretty difficult as sources. They are very long and very annoying to read, especially if you're a beginner. So I never really use them. If it's some significant resolution, like there are some in the Israeli-Palestine conflict that are really kind of well explained on Wikipedia and stuff like that, then go ahead. But usually reading all of the UN resolutions is just a waste of time. Find perhaps a press release from the UN, what different countries sort of argued in the debate, but the whole resolution it's too much. So if you decide to do that and decide to draw the opinion of your country directly from that, that's great. But I don't really recommend that. So the next one is, So again, this is the, the one step above everyone else. If you want to really be the best, you have to know what your opponents think as well. So especially this is true for sort of less known issues or less known conflicts. Like if I told you, if I was the chair and I said we're discussing, I don't know, the conflict in Kosovo, probably you don't know that much about that. So if I give you the country United States, you have your position, but it would be really smart for you to also read the Serbian position. So that takes, again, more work for you, but in the end, a better preparation, and you have more ammunition to fight in the debate. So I recommend you do that, especially if you're a small country, because if you're a small country, you need all the ammunition that you can get. So, and the last thing, yeah, list your sources in the footnotes in the position paper. That just establishes that you're doing something, that you're going the extra mile, because a lot of people don't do that. Yeah, so these are the sources that I always use. The CIA World Factbook has information, especially on very small or kind of irrelevant countries that you can't really find anywhere else. So if you're like, I don't know, if you're Canada or Russia, then you don't need this because it's not going to be anything better than Wikipedia. But if you're like, I don't know, Tonga or some African country, you need this. Then OEC is pretty good. Basically, it gives you a really nice illustration of the trade partners for your country. And I always leverage that information and kind of try to not attack my biggest trading partners. And if I knew that someone was attacking their biggest trading partner, I called it out. So this is something that again is the advantage. Um, if you're participating in a security council or something like that, then the live conflict map can be really useful, but it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it's kind of irrelevant information as well. Then military power, again, just for Security Council. Sorry. Um, yeah. So if I saw correctly, most of you in the Harvard MUN have really small countries. And, excuse me, it is harder to do, to have a small country, but in my opinion, it also gives you the potential to do really well. What do you mean? Like, I've been very relevant countries before. I've been Equatorial Guinea, and it's really hard to even find any information on that. So one advantage is if you don't know, you can make it up because the chairs don't know either. The second advantage is you can surprise the chairs because always they choose how to give out the countries based on your prior experience or the reputation of your school. So if they gave you a really relevant country, they expect you to not be very good. So you can surprise them by a good performance, and this is a way to do well. Finding sources is way harder, of course, especially if it's an African country. They don't really have national news. They sometimes don't have governments. So, sorry guys. Um, so you have to use everything that you can. And again, if you don't know, you can make it up. It's really important to find a sort of character that you can play as the dictator or the ruling regime for your country. If it's, I don't know, an African warlord, play as that warlord. That's what separates the lame delegates from the fun ones that win. So try to play a character because it's gonna give you an advantage. You can't really play as Vladimir Putin. That you can't do that because it's a serious country with a serious foreign policy, but you can play as, I don't know, some random African warlord for the Congo, or I don't know. Honestly, I forgot about when I was Congo, what did we do, but I really suggest that you have a bit of fun with that. So yeah, research even more. Basically, it's a harder job for you, but it's also a great opportunity. Um, and also be on the offensive more than on the defensive, because no one's gonna attack you because you're irrelevant unless you make yourself a target. So you have to be the loudest person in the room to get noticed. Everyone's gonna notice the United States. No one's gonna notice a random African country. So you have to make yourself visible by being annoying, being provocative, by you know stirring the conversation into the direction that you want it to go. And like if you do that, I can guarantee you that you have a much higher chance of getting best delegate, because no one at the beginning, no one will pay attention to you, but at the end, you have to become the kingmaker. You have to be the one that passes the resolution, stuff like that. Rallies support, rallies the votes. That's how you do the best. So now we can go to the example. Okay. Okay, I hope you can see this. Okay. So I was Bolivia in the Security Council on the situation in Palestine. So I don't know how much you know about Bolivia, but it's very pro-Palestine, very anti-Israel. So it has. Let me just find a nice statement, a nice juicy statement. Okay, I hope you can see what I highlighted. Stuff like that. So I did exactly what I tried to explain to you now. I was a small country that no one really knows the position of ahead of time. So I made myself known by being provocative. During the debate, I constantly called Israel, I don't know, what did I call them? Like a terrorist state, an apartheid state, stuff like that. And in the end, of course, I got past that. No, I'm just kidding. But in the end, everyone kind of had to have me in the coalition, because otherwise I would just destroy the reputation and destroy their arguments. So I was being very annoying. I was provoking Israel in the United States all the time. And in the end, they had to veto our resolution, of course, since it was the Security Council, but in the end, I was the moral winner. So as you can see, I filled out 2 pages because apparently that was the limit. And at the bottom, I have my sources. So the sources that I used, of course, were Russia Today. I did some UN stuff. Wikipedia is appropriate. I don't remember what this is. So a lot of Russia Today, UN apparently. But yeah, I essentially chose to associate myself with the sort of Eastern Bloc, not the Eastern Bloc from the Cold War, but the Russia, China, Middle East Bloc. That's on the side of more on the side of Palestine, and I also took the sources that they would use, right? Since I couldn't really use Bolivian sources since I don't speak Spanish, so that was out of the question for me. Speaking another language, the language of your country is always a huge advantage, but you know, it's very situational. So yeah, what I wanted to show you is fill up your space and be as provocative as you can, but also back up your statements. Every statement that I have, it's backed up. It's backed up by, I don't know, a UN thing, a thing from history that's documented. If I'm making a statement kind of as to my position on a certain issue, I back it up by a statement of one of our politicians. So this is how you build basically authority. And in the end, I always try to finish with a sort of funny statement. So here you can read it. Basically, Iran called Netanyahu's, or was it Iran? I don't know who it was. They called Netanyahu's presentation in the UN an arts and crafts show, and you know the chairs really liked that. So I think that humor is really a way to make yourself more likable, especially if you're gonna be as annoying as I was and as not as hateful. But I really Bolivia really hates Israel, so you know I had to play that character, and I had to balance it out, of course, by being a bit more humorous in other parts of my speeches and stuff like that. So this is I think this is a good example of a position paper. It's never longer than this. I've never had a position paper longer than 2 pages, since the chairs don't really want to read that. And the little footnotes, so with the numbers, are really a great way to directly point to the source. So you make a statement and you point to the source immediately. So that's how I do it. Let me just stop sharing. Oh, okay, apparently the whole presentation collapsed. So yeah, okay. Yeah, so here I embrace the language, okay? I embrace the language of the Bolivian diplomats that they actually use in the UN. So I kind of played the character that I was supposed to play, and it paid off. It paid off in the end. And that's it, guys. That's all I have to say. So just be confident in your knowledge, be confident in your country. You have to be kind of patriotic for a country that you've never been to, perhaps, but you really have to put yourself in a position of a diplomat from that country. You know, he's trying to get ahead in life. Maybe he's trying to become the ambassador to the UN or whatever. You know, the politician in his own country. He has to have the best performance possible. He has to get the best deal possible for his country. Um, so that's how I always imagine it. You know, MUN is, in my opinion, more for fun than for learning. But if you take advantage of the opportunities, you know, I learned about countries that I barely even knew they existed. You know, and then after I wrote a position paper on their position on some random issue, I also, in the meantime, learned about their culture, about their geography, their alliances, their enemies, their internal problems, stuff like that. And every bit of information helps, and not just about your country, again, about your enemies even more. So make sure to do the due diligence for the whole committee and prepare yourself as best as you can, because without preparation there is no best delegate for sure, especially not in a competitive conference. So I at the start I used to prepare like for 3 days per conference. At the end, it was more like 2 days or 1 day and a half. But I have quite a lot of knowledge about geopolitics already, so for me it was pretty easy. Again, if you get a random country, it takes more than that. But make sure to abide by the deadline for the position paper, send it on time, send it in a presentable way, and then just practice, read, and even during the conference itself, read the news about the issue that you're discussing, because sometimes things come up right then and there that you can use in your debate, and that's really powerful if you can say, oh yeah, 30 minutes ago this thing happened, because no one's prepared for that, and it gives you an immediate advantage. So just follow the news, and that's it. That's all you can do. And I wish you the best. So that's it from my side. And at the end, I think we have a Q&A as well if someone has any questions. So I leave it off to my partners there, yes.
Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, so now moving on, we will see a basic framework for when you're preparing for a conference. We will see how you can come up with different solutions for a problem if it has various different perspectives. So the first thing that you want to do is to analyze the topic and do as much research as possible. Using the framework from the first presentation, I don't know how many of you were there, but it was a very early interesting framework presented by Melissa, I think. So you should definitely check it out from the slides, and it's going to be very helpful for the rest of this process. And please always remember to interpret all information from the perspective of your own country and see how this problem relates to your nation's interests and how you can represent them the best way possible. So now the next step is to try to dissect your problem into smaller issues or areas that you could focus on and maybe try to bring up during the committee work. So, for example, if there is a topic such as climate change, you could say that, okay, one category will be about the role of corporations, one will be about the role of the education and the educational systems, one will be about the role of individuals. So that could be simple citizens and what they have to do as individuals, or maybe it could be like a researchers and like some institution maybe that does research on that issue. And also finally, it could be something like transnational agreements between countries and like how you could come up with a new initiative between different countries to help them tackle an issue. So next, you will need to prepare a document, which will probably be quite long as a process, but it definitely gets easier as you practice and learn more about how to strategically approach Model UN. So basically, you need a document that has 3 columns, and you will do this for each sub-problem. I know it sounds like a lot, but okay. So the first column will be about previous solutions. So you want to ask yourself 3 questions. What actions has the United Nations, the European Union, or NATO previously taken? And how could these be improved? So you basically want to search how other big institutions and international alliances have tried to how to tackle an issue. Then you want to search about what actions have individual countries previously taken, and that can be scaled to an international level. So, for example, if a small country has done something to fix the situation in their country, how can this become larger and kind of be adopted from all other countries? And then you basically want to analyze or try to find out through research, but it's usually not very easy to find information that actually answers to this question. But you want to see whether or not these solutions have been effective and if they have worked and why they did so or didn't. So, for example, if you could find a research about and some specific percentages about some issue, for example, racism, then you could understand, okay, so these changes helped or these changes did not help. And like you could see how different percentages and different statistics change over the years. So after you have finished with this column, you need to use all of this information to start brainstorming about solutions that are based on this information. So we could call this column like improved solutions. And basically, based on this analysis, you would come up with all these improved or similar solutions. And you basically want to ask yourself the question of how can the United Nations oversee if these improved solutions actually work, either through formal or informal mechanisms, because always remember that the GA is not able to pass something that is legally binding. So you can't make countries follow what you pass as a resolution, but you can definitely do that if you are in the Security Council, because what with the directives you have to other countries do have to follow it. And then lastly, you would have to start approaching the issue from a completely different perspective, and you should try to find new solutions and something that is very different from what has happened in the past. And you want to answer what completely new measures could be taken, and maybe if you have a specific directive or a specific solution and new initiative, you want to really get into what this plan of action entails. Like first this is going to happen, then that, and lastly this. And also you need to say who will be responsible for the enforcement and the funding of these measures. You don't just want to say that we're going to raise public awareness. You basically need to say how and who will help you do that and why do you want to do that. Now, moving on to the last step, which is about writing a resolution. After discussing all these solutions with other members in your block, you would and start agreeing on them, that all of these countries want to propose them to the rest of the committee. You need to translate these solutions into clauses. following some additional rules, in addition to those rules that we discussed in the previous workshop. So first of all, a clause cannot be more than a sentence. Think that the whole resolution is supposed to be a super long sentence, and you basically have small parts, and each part is a solution. And each clause can be very long. You just need to make sure that it makes sense and it's not like very general or very like weird, and not other people would not be able to get it in the rest of the committee. And you want to be very specific about who is going to do what, where is this initiative going to take place, how are you going to do that, how will you find the resources and the funding that you need to do that. Also, to help you become more specific, it's really useful to use and write subclauses. They are allowed, and actually they are super encouraged. And if you do that, you show to others that you have really thought through this solution, and you basically say, okay, I have searched about this possible plan of action, I have thought it out, and here is why it's going to be effective. Also, in the clause specifically, you don't have to explain the reasoning behind the solution. So you don't have to say that we want to do this in order for this to happen. This is not needed in the resolution. You can use this during the debate to try to convince other delegates that this plan of action is important and we should pass it. And finally, you should never be scared or afraid to ask the chairs for help. They are there just to help you. They're not there to be like strict and very serious, and like they don't want you to be afraid of them. They basically are there to help you communicate better and help you with your thoughts to organize them. So if you ask a chair, how can I write this in a clause, or is this clause good enough? A good chair will definitely help you, and he will see this as a positive thing, that you are trying to become better and that you don't think that you know everything. So now we will see some example clauses from like some resolutions from the Model UN conferences I have attended. So we can see that, for example, in the first one, so in the first one, we see calls for the United Nations to establish the UN Nations Cybersecurity Agency with the aim to. So then the rest of the subclauses are very specific on the various different actions that this new body would have to do. And keep in mind that even though creating a new body is usually not very good, as we will see later on, but it can be a useful clause if you have really thought about it and you can see that there is no other similar body. So for example, it was a topic about cybersecurity and how we can protect democracy from cybersecurity. And basically, even though cybersecurity is part of the actions taken by an office for counterterrorism, and there's also a different office for information and technology, you say this is a very, very important issue. So it would be good to have a completely different agency. So that's why you would be able to present this and to propose this. And so, for example, in the second, now moving on to the second clause, you see that we are talking about the United Nations community imposing targeted sanctions. And you see, again, we are very specific about who will have to take these sanctions and what they could be. It's not just saying that there will be sanctions. You need to be very specific about it. And for example, in this clause, you could also use stuff and information from previous clauses. So for example, here we mentioned the agency. So you see that it basically tries to connect different clauses together and bring it together as a whole solution to help with this issue. Now, moving on to some general tips about debating and like some strategies during your committee work. First of all, we have some tips for defending your resolution. So if you want to defend a clause or an idea that you have during debate, and after introducing the resolution, you could try to explain how it will help address the issue using logic and like kind of a cause and effect line of thinking, and like trying to show step by step how this plan will help us in this situation. You could also use examples from other similar approaches that were helped to address different events. So for example, if you have two war conflicts that are maybe similar in some aspects, you could say that, okay, why don't we try using the mechanism that we used in that situation and it actually paid off. And also you could cite an independent committee or international organization. So this could be the World Health Organization. It couldn't be some very small or quite biased and not very commonly known source. And for example, even offices that are between certain countries, they wouldn't help a lot. You need something that is an international and independent. And in general, when you're trying to argue for a resolution, you should try to avoid generalizations and biased claims. These never help. And like if you say something that it looks very suspicious, someone will definitely try to search about it or try to find something to say. And you can usually tell when the delegate is lying. And also if it's something that is very, very wrong, even the chair could say that what you're saying is wrong, like the committee should not take this into consideration. And now, if you find strong resistance in passing either a resolution or for a specific clause, you could try introducing a motion for an unmoderated caucus to try to negotiate with the other bloc. So that is basically like a lobbying process, but it's an unmoderated caucus where you can try to negotiate and try to say, okay, I will vote for this if you do that, and you should vote for my resolution. And after that, you could possibly introduce a change, an add or a change amendment for a specific clause in order to make it more specific or to make it less controversial. And maybe you could also try like making it a bit more general and say that the more specific details of this initiative will be discussed in a next session, where you know that there won't be a next session. And finally, if you see that this clause will definitely not pass, if the resolution will not pass due to this specific clause, and you think that this clause is not very important it's not as important as passing the whole resolution, and like there is a bigger cause and a bigger reason that you want to pass it, then you could just introduce a delete amendment, and this would be possibly your last resort. Now, another very important topic in Model UN is attacking a resolution from the opposite bloc or with a bloc that you don't really agree with. So basically, you want to only attack resolutions if necessary, meaning that your country disagrees or something could go terribly wrong or something doesn't seem right. You don't want to just speak for the sake of speaking or to seek revenge. So for example, you shouldn't say that these two delegates spoke against my resolution and voted against it and like, for example, veto it, then I should do the same. And like, this is basically why this could negatively impact your resolution afterwards. Now, to try to find something wrong for each clause, you should try to think holistically and try to approach it from various different perspectives. And this could be the economy, the individual citizens, the society as a whole, businesses, environment, international relations and agreements, waste of resources. So for example, I think the international relations and agreements needs a little bit more detail. So basically you could say that if we do this, then maybe it will harm this trade agreement, or it could harm this transnational initiative. So we should definitely not do that. So for example, there are a lot of clauses that encourage the formation of a new committee or a task force. And these are usually bad because it is very likely that another similar organization already exists and that you just don't know about it. Or maybe it doesn't exist because someone else has thought about it and decided that it is not feasible due to the resources and the funding available. And finally, instead of just attacking and voting against a resolution, you should always try to consider introducing an amendment, because this shows that you're not there just to state your opinion and move on and vote against anything that is opposing your perspective, but that you are there to try to work with others and try to build on each other's ideas. And for example, you could also try discussing it with the sponsor or the other block of that resolution, and maybe try to introduce it with her help. Now, moving on with working in a block. So forming a block is very scary because it's one of the first things that you need to do during debate. And it's usually when no one knows anyone. And especially now with the online MUN conferences going on, it's even harder, because when you are in person, you would be able to go to the committee a bit earlier and try to personally connect with others, say, oh, do you want to stay together and work together, and things like that. It was much, much easier to get to know others, whereas now you're just going to join a call and start working together with other people. And it's usually quite hectic, if you have also seen like some of our sessions. So during block time, you want to try to be a leader, and you basically want to do that in order to try to become a sponsor or a co-sponsor of the resolution that you are preparing, because it shows that you are really active and you are really good in persuading others. So some tips for becoming a leader is that you should try to set yourself apart from the very beginning, and maybe doing this by delivering an amazing speech, by following some of the tips that Dan previously mentioned, and basically with preparing and giving an amazing opening speech, you are going to be able to show that you know the topic very well, that you know who you want in your block very well, and that you are capable of leading this block and being the one that represents it. Also, you want to make sure that you create a safe environment where everyone is able to share their opinions, and that you need to make sure that they feel respected and they feel heard. And like, for example, if someone is very quiet and is not sharing ideas, or maybe if it's one of the first time that he or she or they are presenting, I'm sorry, they are attending Model UN conference, then you should try to help them and approach them in private to help them grow and to talk about their opinion. Also, it's really, really important in blocks to not be bossy or rude. And maybe you do this because you're really excited about getting your idea through, but sometimes you should always make sure that you don't not cut other people off, and that you do not do it in a kind of offensive way that makes others feel that their opinion is less important than yours. And finally, it is really helpful, and I think in all Model UN conferences, you need to work together in a Google Doc. It's really helpful because everyone edits and builds on each other's ideas. So you should definitely make sure that you are capable of using that software very easily and quickly. So there is a quote that I really like about winning a Best Delegate Award. And one of my chairs in a Model UN conference told me that. And it's basically that the best delegate is the delegate that brings out the best in other delegates. So you need to not be the only one who helps the committee work progress by being the only one that talks and the only one that proposes ideas. You should try to get everyone to participate and try to make even younger delegates or more beginner delegates participate actively and be open to debate. And finally, some general tips about speeches. You should always respect the time limit, and always speak a lot and try to fill it. But always remember that you shouldn't just speak to like hear your own voice and say nothing at the end of the day, but you need to make sure that whatever you are saying, it is helping the committee work progress, and the chairs can definitely tell if which one of the two you are doing. And if you do the first one, they will definitely get very angry and they will not look positively upon you for the rest of the conference. Now, it is all very important in your speeches to have structure and content, but it's also very important to respect delegate decorum. So you want to refrain from doing any offensive attacks to other delegates or to other countries. You want to use phrases like the delegate of believes or the country believes instead of I believe that we should do that. You should always try to be very formal, and it's rather very good if you start your speeches with I'm sorry, if you start with honorable chair, fellow delegates, or esteemed delegates, and thank you for recognizing me or for giving me the floor and things like that. You should try to incorporate them into your speeches because it shows that you have experience and that you are able to really get into the simulation and understand your role there. So concerning the structure of each speech, you basically should always try to follow this model where you comment on what other delegates have already mentioned and what they have said, and then try to introduce some new content, which could be a new idea, a new perspective, or a new argument. You don't want to just get up there and in your 1.5 minute of speech, you just say, oh yes, the country agrees with that, thank you. You want to try to say something that is going to help other countries comment back on that, because if one country says a few stuff and then everyone agrees or everyone disagrees, and then all of the countries go like, yes, we agree, or yes, we disagree, then this is not going to help the debate, and it's going to be very boring and it's going to be very static. Whereas if you give a new perspective or a new argument, it's going to show that you have tried to analyze and think about this clause or resolution or idea a lot. And finally, a tip is that you should always try to accept 2 or 3 points of information and try to answer at the best of your ability. But this also depends on the time constraints and what the chair thinks, because, for example, if it's very close to the end of the session and the chair believes that it would be better to hear 2 more delegates than having more POIs, then the chair could set a limit to the POIs. And also you should try to respect the time limit for the POIs, which is usually around like 30 seconds. And when you are doing a POI, please try to keep it very short and to the point, and make sure that it's a question and it's very direct, and it's not an attack to the country if it's not a question, or if it's not, or that it's not you taking a position on that matter. And finally, if you cannot answer a question, you could always say that you're going to answer later, or try to kind of give a more of a general answer, and possibly give a more specific one later in a different speech. Or you could also use a note and send a note more in the physical conferences. But in general, it is very, very good, both in physical and online conferences, to use notes or personal chats, because it helps you communicate with other people in your block. And if it's a physical conference, depending on the size of the committee, it could really show that you're really invested and you're really engaged and immersed in the whole experience, and that you're actually trying to get people to agree or disagree. So this is all that we had to present. We will now have a Q&A. So if anyone has a question, just turn on your mic and tell us. Thank you very much.
Yes, I do have a question, sorry. So how much time will we be given to write the resolution?
Do you want to
So
take that? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I can take it. So it really depends on the conference. There are conferences where, for example, in the Thymune, the Hague International Model UN, we had like a whole day with quite a few hours of lobbying and presenting and preparing the resolutions. But it really of the conference because there are also many conferences that do not follow the same procedure. So, for example, I have also taken part in a conference where we just started building the resolution over the days by switching between moderated and unmoderated caucuses. So it really depends on the rules of procedure. So does it answer the question?
Yes. So what I understood, you meet the first day, everybody does their opening speech, then you get the opportunity to make the resolutions you want, generating coalitions and those things, and then you go on into debating, correct?
Yes, it's correct. But again, it depends on the conference. So, for example, and it also depends on the chair and the specific committee. So, for example, again, in the Hague International MUN, we first did lobbying on the first day, and then we got into presenting our opening speeches. So it really depends, and the chair will tell you. But usually, this is the like the steps that follow.
What do you mean as lobbying?
Lobbying is basically the time that delegates have without their chairs, and it's like the informal caucus where people are just preparing the resolution, negotiating, and saying their ideas. And
Okay.
without the chair, they don't have any limits. It's like a video call with a lot of people, or a group of like 10 to 15 delegates preparing a resolution together.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I can add to that, if you're scared, usually in my experience, there is not enough time to write a good resolution during the conference. So what we did is either, if it's a multi-day conference, in the evening, usually since they were physical, after the end of the debate sessions and before the social events, I would be writing the resolution for the next day. Or if you really try hardy, you can write one before the conference itself, or at least some clauses that you think would be applicable to the topic. But if you do that, because some people do that every time they go to a conference, you will come off as really, trying very hard to win. And sometimes that's not the best look. So do it at your own risk. If you have some clauses prepared that you can quickly paste into the resolution that you're writing on the spot, that's the perfect strategy, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And so many delegates and like most delegates already prepare a resolution on their own to basically try to put their solutions into clause language. But officially, it is not allowed in most Model UN conferences. And if you tell chair, they're going to be very mad. But everyone knows that it happens. And also, you want to if you say it, you need to make sure that it doesn't come off as bossy and trying to be the leader without actually being the kind leader, being more of a authoritarian leader.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And also, do you know how many people we will be in the video chat during the Harvard MUN? Like more or less? Or
If it's a General Assembly, then like 180.
but in a video call? Like I'm hoping.
I don't know which committee you're in, but usually committees are like 20 to 30 people, unless it's a General Assembly where there's supposed to be all the countries, so that's a bit less than 200.
But in lobbying time, it's not going to be all of you. Like in lobbying, it's usually like 10 to 15 people working together.
And how do you choose the 15 people? It's going to be random?
That's going to be pretty difficult. So I have no idea how they're going to do it, but basically your country is within a block, a geopolitical block. So I don't know which country you have. Which country do you have?
I don't know. They still have to give us the country.
Okay. So for example, if you got Russia, you would go into a block with, I don't know, China, Belarus, countries that are close to it. So in the lobbying time, you should try to find your allies, not your enemies. I mean, it may be a good strategy also to go provoke your enemies, but I don't know how much time you have. So I suggest you just try to find your block and try to form a coalition.
And also, adding to that, usually each committee has more than one topic to discuss, and you don't have to work on all of the topics. It's usually, and so for example, again in the Hague International MUN, I was in a GA committee, and there were 4 different topics. And basically, on the first day, you go in and you tell the chair, I am focusing on that topic. And they say, okay, you can go to these 4 blocks, go and ask which one you want. But I don't know how it's going to work in like online conferences. Does anyone have other questions?
This is the perfect time to ask, guys. You can also DM us or something, but this is much easier, so we can give a longer answer. Really, if you're a beginner, I suggest you try to ask something.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for all of this. It's super useful. And so my question is, I don't really understand the links between the committees and the General Assembly. Like, how does it work?
Stergis, you want to do this or?
What do you want?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I got the question right. I think it was how do you like the different committees that exist?
No, it's not really that. It's like, do we debate in our committees and then move to the General Assembly, or like, is there only
Sometimes.
debate in the General Assembly?
No,
Like,
so
I don't
basically
really get it.
the General Assembly is separated in different committees. So for example, one is GA1 is usually disarmament and international security. The second one is, I think, economic and social. I'm not sure. There is one for they're basically different committees, and you are given one committee. So, for example, it could be the legal committee. You would have certain topics in this committee, and you would also be given a specific country. So you would be a delegate in GA1, but there are also other delegates. There is a delegate in GA2 with the same country, but different topics. But you all are like the same delegation, and you represent the same country, and it's usually people from the same school or like the same university. Does this answer your question? Like, do you want me to detail something? I'm not sure.
No, thank you. That was my question. Thank you so much. And another question, do you know when we're going to get the debate, like the subjects that are debated?
No idea.
We're not sure. I don't know if Marga
Okay.
is.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm here. How are you, first of all? Because I joined kind of late. Is everyone doing great?
Amazing.
Amazing. So for Harvard MUN, I just heard back from them. We have to assign the delegates by the 20th of January, and then you guys have to send your position paper by the 27th. So maybe we can like have a video call sometime soon where we're gonna start like assigning you guys to the country that you prefer, and I'm gonna inform myself about like the actual modalities, like for example which day we're gonna do lobbying, which day is gonna be like debating, the exact issues. I'm gonna send them an email. I'm gonna check their website a bit more in detail because maybe they updated it, and I'll let you guys know in the group chat as usual. And yes, I just wanted to thank our two amazing chairs. You guys really did an amazing job. It's incredible. Like, I mean, it took you so much time, and like, yeah, you took your time to put together good such a good presentation. Like, really, it's really appreciated, especially during exam session. Like your hard work is really appreciated. So thank you and congrats. Round of applause. You guys did an amazing job. And well, thank you all for joining also. Um, and yes, you can find the recording on YouTube. We're gonna put it on YouTube because you guys, like, I think you guys can imagine how like priceless the tips and the advice that they gave you are, like, really. So take them into consideration. Watch the recording on YouTube. Ask them questions, like, either right now or you can also DM them if you want. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, ask questions, really.
We are
Because,
here to help you. Don't worry.
yeah, we're super friendly.
No, they're not, but
Now,
So
if
one
you're
question.
using
One
Korean,
question.
yeah,
Yes, of course.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. So first of all, thanks. And so if we have to deliver our position papers by the 27th of January, if I understood well, when do you suggest starting looking for the first information, and how much does it usually take to write down a good position paper if you are kind of a beginner?
yeah. So, it really depends. If you get a topic that you really know nothing about, then I suggest you should start, depending on your exams, I don't know, 2 weeks before, and start reading about the topic, and then start writing the paper itself, let's say a week before. And I haven't told you guys yet, but if you want, I can review your position papers. You can send them to me, but if I get like 15 of them in one day and the deadline is coming, that's not going to work out. So if you could, I don't know, spread out a bit, that would be perfect. But about your question, it really depends on your speed and your level of knowledge. So for me, in the end, it took me, one day to do it. But I suggest you take a bit more time, especially if you're not familiar with your country and if the country is very small, because it is going to take you a while to find the right resources. And if you want to go through UN resolutions, that's going to take even more time. And again, if you want to really get ready, then after you finish the position paper, you should start reading about other countries as well. But before the position paper, just focus on your country and the issue itself. Read the study guide. Go through if it's a conflict. I don't think you got Security Council, but either way, go through the sources that I listed in the presentation and check them out, and check, of course, the usual Wikipedia and stuff. Maybe watch some documentaries. That's very good resource as well. And after that, just start writing. And once you're basically you have written the whole thing, check it again, go over all the details and list the sources, and then send it to me if you want. So if that takes you 1 week, then I can't really tell you that, but take at least 14 days if you're a beginner.
Okay, great, thanks.
No problem.
I have another question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can't hear you very well.
Please try to approach the microphone.
Approach the microphone.
Better?
A bit.
Okay, this is the closest I can get to my laptop.
Yeah, now it's fine.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, right. So my question is regarding like the usage of chits in the committee, because like in committees like legal and ECOSOC with 190 delegates, do we have the chit system, or how does it work now? If you have any idea.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. So the what system?
The notes, the chits. I don't know how we call it here, but we used to call it chit system in India.
So
Oh, the
the
nodes.
nodes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically you
Right.
can use them as much as you want. There's no issue. Usually in very big committees that are very formal, there will be a few volunteers that will be going around to transfer messages from one delegate to the other. And you would need an official paper that like it has your country's flag on it. It's like very formal. But in smaller committees where there are like 15 or 20 people, and if you are like around the table, it would be very easily to just hand it to them in like a scratch paper to just take some and send something, whatever you want. But it's usually very helpful. Does this answer your question?
Right. So how do we do it online was the part of the
Yeah,
question.
I'm guessing they're gonna have actual MUN software for this. So not like using, I don't know, Teams or Zoom. I think they're gonna have something special just for MUN. So it's definitely gonna have all the functions that you need, and they're just gonna explain it to you at that time. So don't worry about that. You're gonna have everything figured out for sure.
Yeah, and basically, if it's just a Zoom call, you can still just use the private chat to like privately message a specific person.
And I suggest like a good trick is to get actual WhatsApps or whatever other mode of communication you want from your closest allies if they're like good delegates as well. I always did that. So we actually plan things out, even though you're not actually supposed to do that, but you know, Machiavelli and stuff, you have to, the ends justify the means. To plan things out after the session and maybe communicate about the resolution. So that's kind of an informal way of note passing. So in this setting online, I don't know how that would work, but you can probably do that as well. So use all the tools that you can.
Yeah, all right, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so does anyone else have any questions? Well, I guess not. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. It was a pleasure to have you. We definitely hope that our tips will help you preparing and during participating in conferences. We are definitely available for any questions in our DMs or in the group chat, whatever you want. And don't feel free to reach out. Don't hesitate. And again, thank you very much. That's all.
Yeah, guys. Have a good evening and
Thanks a lot.
good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, chairs. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks.
It was our last event of 2020. So I wish you guys a happy festive season and hoping that 2021 will be better than 2020. But I think it's not going to be that hard. And see you in 2021 and have fun and take care of yourself and of your loved ones as well. And enjoy Christmas break.
Margot, will we
Yes.
have another conference before the start